Welcome, everyone, to another Brand Doctor podcast episode. I have a long-time friend, met this gentleman in Russell Brunson's Inner Circle group probably 3.5 years ago. Awesome guy. Super excited to have him on the show today. He is a master when it comes to webinar creation and how to get your webinar dialed in to help you connect with your target audience and help you convert those audience members into customers. So Joel, welcome to the show, my dude. It's been a long time coming.
Boom, Henry. I'm pumped, man. It's been a couple of weeks since we chatted last. So
yeah.
I got my coffee. I'm on cup number 3, so I'm bringing the heat.
Oh man, you're fired up. I can tell. I can feel it coming through the screen here. So real quick, Joel, for those folks that may not know who you are from my audience, just can you give them a quick background on how you got into, being an expert when it comes to webinars?
Yeah, of course. So my background is in something completely unrelated to sales and marketing. I graduated from Rochester Institute of Technology back in almost 10 years ago with a degree in mechanical engineering technology. So in my mind, cool, gonna live the dream as a mechanical engineer. That lasted for 5 years of education. That lasted for all of 8 months before I said, screw this. Like, there's no way that I could do it. Number one, I was a pretty terrible engineer, but I got along well with my coworkers. I remember I walked up to my first mentor in the engineering field, and we were looking at a set of plans and like floor plans, and I couldn't even figure out what angle we were looking at this. I'm like, am I looking at this at the front angle or the floor plan? And he's like, dude, this is a floor plan, meaning you're looking at the floor. I'm like, oh, okay, makes sense.
I love your honesty. I love your honesty.
So anyway, needless to say, that didn't last long, and it was just too boring for me. I couldn't sit still at the computer. So I'll tell the very, very abridged version of this. I started looking for new opportunities, and I saw that a sales rep firm was hiring, a sales engineering firm. So what they were doing was they were marketing their products to where I was currently working. So the consulting engineers, that's where I was currently working. So they were marketing their products to us, and they needed somebody to help grow a new territory in Buffalo. I was living in Rochester at the time. Buffalo was about an hour and 15 minutes away. So we were planning to build a new office and open up a new office, and they were looking for some young blood to train, and I had 0 sales experience. Well, I walked into the interview. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get this job. Turns out they love me for whatever reason, and they offered me the job, and that was my step into the world of sales and marketing, just learning through trial by fire. So for the first 2 or 3 years, really struggling. I mean, I loved the job. Like I really did. I loved it. I got to express my interpersonal skills. I got to interact with lots of different people. The contracting industry, those were my primary customers. I hated every single one of them for the most part. As much as I love my job, it's a terrible industry to go into. I can't blame the contractors themselves. It's more an industry-wide problem. But we were struggling to grow, especially as somebody, trying to break into a brand new territory, building connections, building your book of business, the whole 9 yards. And our primary method for attracting new projects, new leads, and new sales was through sales presentations. And what we would do is we would have our manufacturers come in, they'd fly in from all over the country, and it would be my responsibility to book appointments for them so they could give sales presentations. This would happen once a month, maybe once every 2 months. And we didn't have a whole lot of customers. So it meant every time a manufacturer came in, I had to go to the same 10 engineers and contractors and give the same presentation. And after a while, I started to realize there was a huge gap specifically with the sales presentation. Most of our manufacturers were engineers giving sales presentations to other engineers or contractors. And as I'm looking out in the audience while they're giving these presentations, all of their heads are just they're going to sleep and they're not interested. And it didn't turn into any business. And after a while, I'm like, why are we not fixing this? Like the mentality that my company had was like, just keep knocking on doors. Like it was just brute force sales. And I did that for 3 years and we had a little bit of progress, but it was freaking exhausting and terrible positioning because we were always chasing prices. Like we were always trying to undercut and just be the low bidder. Like that was their sales mentality to get market share. So after a while, I'm like, either I need to get out of here because I wasn't making any money. I was a commission-only salesperson. I was barely like making my draw. I'm like, well, I need to figure out how to improve this. So I identified that if I could fix the sales presentation or just somewhat improve the sales presentation and give them myself, it would give me a lot more value. It would provide my clients with a lot more. It would give me better positioning to my clients. And so as I was traveling around the country, when I would fly to these manufacturing facilities to learn about their products so I could go home and sell them, I remember I would every layover in the airport, I would go to the bookstore and I would buy one, sales presentation book or some sort of book on how to give effective sales presentations. Mm-hmm. And so I would do it. And after 3 or 4 books, I started noticing a trend. Like they're all saying something very, very similar in just a different light. Like, okay, cool. I'm going to go give this a shot. I'm going to take some of my manufacturer's presentations. I'm going to redo them. And I'm just going to go give them on my own. And so I basically threw them out, rewrote them from scratch, and the rest is history. So after I started doing that, like after the first presentation, I remember it led to probably well over $1 million in revenue just from one client. And to put that in perspective, for the first 3 years of what we were doing, I think I was generating anywhere between $500,000 to $800,000 in total sales. Wow. So $1 million from one client. Now that was amortized over 1.5 to 2 years, but still, it was like a fuck. Oh, I don't know if I can swear, but it was like it was a huge switch. And so sales skyrocketed, and my company gave me like more territories to handle. Like, oh wow, like good job, Joel. Like let's give you more work. I ended up just getting completely burned out. I was making good money at the time, but I quickly got burned out, and then jumped into this world of entrepreneurship. So any questions so far?
I love it. I mean, it gives us a nice foundation now of where you started and how you were sort of you've built your cred, and you mastered the craft, and you did the work that needed to be done prior to getting into this expertise of webinars. Well, I see the easy transfer from presentation, because what a webinar is a sales presentation online. I mean, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to you offline, and we were talking about a scenario that I recently was in with one of my clients. And I want to share this because it's very, very important to understand how to position a webinar properly to the proper audience. So I was working with a client, and her target audience was C-suite executives and HR professionals. And she was studying webinars through a digital marketer who is just very well known, but he uses webinars really well for his business. And so she was talking about, I was looking at the way he presented his webinar, and it was very salesy. Like it had like all this big stack at the end where, it was just very pitchy and salesy. And she goes, my gut tells me that my audience isn't going to take to this well. And I said, Lois, they're not. That webinar is not the right webinar for your target audience. Mm-hmm. So you really have to pay attention to that. So always listen to your gut. And like I said, your gut is always right. So when you're looking at that sort of audience, a webinar could be a fantastic platform to communicate and build trust and relationship. And I said, when you're talking to HR execs and C-suite execs, they're looking for that relationship. They're looking for that relationship, but they're also looking to see whether or not you are who you say you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you as good as who you really say you are? And so they're looking for that expertise. They're really looking for that knowledge, right? So I said, we really need to position this webinar as maybe possibly a case study where you have showcased how you've helped a corporation similar to theirs, over a 12 to 18 month period, and what the results you've got from them, right? And then if at all, have a call to action at the end. And some people may argue with me about this, but you may not have a call to action at the end. You may just say, hey, if you are interested in working with me, and I guess this is a call to action, but what I'm trying to say is you don't have to sell, right?
Yeah.
You say, you just bridge the gap and you say, hey, maybe you just, if you're looking to get this sort of help for your organization, here's a link to my website, or here's, and you're not hard selling, you're not hard closing them on this webinar. And she said, yeah, I think that's going to resonate a little bit better with this type of audience. So I want to get your perspective on this. And I want to leave the audience today with a couple of tips, like 3 at the most, because people like to digest in 3s. 3 tips that we can help our audiences when it comes to building brand and connecting using webinars, what to look out for, what to avoid, and what to go all in on.
Yep. Yeah, it's an excellent story, man. It's a great example of people who have been just don't understand really what a webinar truly is. And so I'll kind of start there. Like, where does a webinar fit into your business? And if you look at it from a very top level perspective, the very first thing you have to understand is like, where do webinars fit in the marketing scheme, right? And so webinars fit, they're just another form of content marketing. And if you associate webinars with content marketing, it starts to make this a little bit more easier to understand. And other forms of content marketing, blog posts, case studies, podcasts, like all of this is content marketing, right? So if you look at whatever your business is and whatever the end goal is, maybe you want to book more consultations, maybe you want to showcase your authority, that is how you approach building your webinar. There's a big market out there for people who are selling things on the internet, like courses and products and the whole 9 yards, and great. Like, then you can go through and you can leverage that style of direct selling webinar. But if you've got the C-suite audience, C-level executives, or people who, like, they're not going to be buying anything with a countdown timer after they hop on Webinar Jam or GoToWebinar or whatever, right? You have to think of it that way. So, like, what is your ultimate goal? Because what a webinar can do extremely well is it can build your authority, it can build your brand awareness, and you can close the gap of cold audiences to very close to ready to have a serious conversation of how you can work together. Sure. And that works for every audience. You just have to tailor the content correctly and have the right end goal in mind before you jump into it and say, I'm going to buy this awesome webinar script and we're going to make millions of dollars. And then you go and you make a fool out of yourself. Right. Not really to your fault, because you've been told, oh, this is the ultimate webinar script for every single market, no matter who you're selling to, even if you want to sell to the president of the United States.
That's right. And so I like what you said. I just want to highlight this real quick. Understanding your end goal for the webinar, getting that crystal clear before you even jump into it. Continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for people who are just trying to generate consultations or high quality leads, like, webinars are awesome. Because now your prospect can spend time with you before they ever hop on the phone. They know who you are. They've built up this, know, like, and trust value, and that's super, super critical. And a webinar is like one of the best ways to do that. They get to see your personality. They get to hear you. They get to, like, in their mind, it's almost like they're talking to you face to face. So when you get on the phone, you can even tell them the different types of products and services that you offer. So when they get on the phone, it's a true consultation. It's now, how can we apply this to your business? And how can we make sure this is the right fit for you? So you don't have to go through the whole dog and pony show of, oh, this is what I can do, and try and convince them over the phone. That webinar is your initial salesperson.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So understanding your end goal for your webinar prior to launching it, understanding your audience and who it's geared towards. Another great point. Let's give them two more. So, when I always said, I had a different perspective on webinars. I love webinars, but I feel like the market has been much more sophisticated these days since 3 years ago, when they just started to come really online. And, now everyone knows that they're going to get pitched or sold something at the end. And, the market is just that much more aware. So you could argue with this. You could argue with me with this, but, when I ever consider doing a webinar, I just say, hey, let's get out there for 30 minutes. You could call this a webinar if you want. You know what I mean? And get out there for 30 minutes and really show them your stuff. Help them get some of that cloudiness or those blind spots blown out, and give them something that they can really walk away with and apply. Now, 9 times out of 10, they won't do anything with it. And we've heard that, and I've seen it. And so I do believe that.
No.
But it's like the hard pitching and the hard selling at the end, I think that has come and gone. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be a strategy any longer.
I think it will. I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, there's going to be there's a market saturation point, but the end selling will never go away, right? I mean, like, you might have to adapt your style, and everyone who is in the internet marketing industry can spot a 3 Secrets webinar from 50 miles away now, right. And which is honestly, like, we still see, so inside of my webinar vault, like, I still review lots of webinars that are 3 secret styles, and they're crushing it. Yeah. So, like, that's why I don't believe that they're gonna go away, because, like, the world is like less than 51% of the world is online right now. So 49% of the world still hasn't even come online, right? So, like, this idea of, like, there's endless new market potential that's constantly coming into our world. So while we've been in this internet marketing world for a while, yes, we're saturated, but a lot of times we are not the target audience of who we're trying to sell to. So totally get where you're coming from there, though. I mean, that's why styles have to constantly adapt, and you have to fit your personality. But the direct selling on a webinar, I definitely think will be around for the foreseeable future, whether that's on a Zoom call or Facebook Live. Like, all of those variables will change, but direct selling, happens door to door. Yeah, it'll definitely happen online. Yep.
That's true. Okay. Fair enough. So let me ask you this, Joel, where do most people go wrong when it comes to developing their webinar? And you worked with hundreds of people. I know a lot of them that you have worked with, and they're getting great success, or have gotten great success. But when they come to you, they're coming to you for a better solution. And what do you typically see as a common denominator that most people get tripped up on when it comes to webinars?
Yeah. So one of the biggest mistakes, the number one mistake that I see with people's webinars is their offer. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're direct selling at the end. So, like, yes, that's a big piece of it, but even if they're selling a consultation or a call to action to just hop on the phone, or whatever that next step is, they have to build a sexy offer. Like, why should somebody take time out of their day to book a call with you? Why should somebody want to take that next step with you? And why is now the time? Those are really critical aspects of what will make or break any webinar performance. The offer is where I spend the most time working with people and making sure it's aligned with their audience. And a lot of times it takes some trial and error, right? Especially if we're going into completely different markets. Now, if I went into the make money online niche and I was working with a client who had, make money business opportunity, like, I've done so many of those that, like, I know the natural objections that they're going to have, so I can overcome them. But I just got an email last night from one of my coaching clients. He has a webinar that is in the Big 4 accounting firm niche. So he teaches people how to get a job at the Big 4, which is really, really cool. So he had his first live webinar last night and he made his first sale. He was all lit up and jazzed. He's like, what do we do next? Like, okay, like, cool. Like, let's just pump the brakes. And I know you want to scale this to the moon, but, and we focused a long time on crafting that offer and making sure that offer is super, super valuable. So that's the first place where people get tripped up is how do we make this offer as irresistible as possible? Now, the second piece where people get tripped up is what I call the expert's curse, which is teaching way too much. Like, Henry, you know everything in the world about branding and design and aligning your message for your clients, right? But if you were to hop on a webinar really without any sort of preparation, you would probably fall victim to what I fall victim to when I get on a webinar or when I get on some sort of sales video, which is like, I'll give you a perfect example. So last October, I was relaunching my my webinar accelerator course. I'm like, okay, cool. I better, eat my own dog food. I better sell this on a webinar. And so the first webinar that I wrote, I went through like 50 minutes of like total nerding out on conversion language and all these different things that like my ideal customer was completely confused about. Like, I'm going through it, I'm talking about different persuasion techniques and tactics. And it's like, they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, that webinar was great, but there's no way in hell that I think I can do a webinar. And so I confused them. And the number one rule is confused mind doesn't buy.
Nope.
So people want to teach way too much on their webinar. And when you teach way too much, you do the exact opposite of inspiring, which is what you want to do. You want to inspire. But when you teach way too much, you confuse them, and that kills your conversions.
Oh, that is a huge nugget there that I want people to pay attention to. So don't overteach and inspire. So what do people like to buy, right? What I realized was they like to buy outcomes. They like to buy solutions. They like to have you talk to their end desired result. I talk about that a lot with my coaching clients. What is the end desired result that your clients want? And have you help them put a value to that? When you could put a value to that, you take everything away from what you're charging, what the objections may be, and you put all the focus on that. Now you're starting to pique interest. And, call it a technique, call it a strategy. I call it clarity. Mm-hmm. I think when you can help them understand, and if I can't help them get there, obviously I'm going to say, listen, I'm not the right fit. Like, I had a client this morning that said, are you going to help us with marketing automation? I go, no, that's not my thing.
Right.
I said, I could get your message dialed in. I'll get you set up and positioned right on the right platforms, but you can't go into automation until you figure out, what works and how, and are you generating proper leads and sales with what you're setting up. So once we get that dialed in, good. I saw you were checking out this marketing automation firm over here. I checked them out too for you. Looks like they're pretty legit. I would engage them when we get to that point. So, that's how I would operate a situation like that, but at the same time, you definitely want to help the client understand if this is so how do you get that, right? How do you understand what their end desired result is? And I always say by proper questioning.
Yep.
So if you can figure out what those top questions are that are really going to be those thought-provoking questions that are going to make them think differently, right? And you stop telling them what they already know. I made the biggest mistake back in the day where I would do these brand audits and I would go to their website and I'd be like, oh my God, look at this website. It's awful. It's this. And they were like, dude, we already know that. Like, that's why we're talking to you. Like, can you tell me something I don't know? And until I started asking the right questions, I kept getting, the wrong answers, and I kept getting the door slammed in my face. Yep. But now I've repositioned all of that, and I really found out, it's give them, challenge their thinking, and like you said, inspire them. Game over.
Yep.
You're really going to start to position yourself as a subject matter expert. You're going to make them, they're going to thank you because you've made them think differently. And that's what I believe, if I were to engage with you to help me get my webinar straightened up, I would want you to be like, I would want you to open up all the doors that I never opened up because I was either afraid and guess what? You do that because I have worked with you on a close basis. And that's what's amazing about what it is that you do. So I'm looking at the time here, so I just got to be conscious of it. We're going to start to wrap up. My question is, if there's one thing that besides the offer, besides paying attention to the irresistible offer, right? What's one thing that our audience should pay attention to when it comes to launching their webinar and having it be the most successful webinar, for them?
So probably the number one thing that you should do is, first and foremost, just be authentic. Meaning, the thing that people miss out on with what a webinar can do for you versus a video sales letter or a PDF is that it allows you to provide your personality. Like, this is especially important for anyone who's in the expert-based business, or you're a solopreneur where you run your own marketing, or you're responsible for marketing and selling. People want to buy you above all else. So when you're authentic and when you're clear and you express your personality, that'll overcome a lot of deficiencies in your content. It won't overcome an irresistible offer, and it won't overcome some other core components, but it will get you like 70% of the way there. Yeah. People buy you more than they buy anything else. And if you say some stuff that's screwed up or that doesn't make sense, like, that's fine, because they're just going to trust you, right? So they buy you and they want to trust you. They trust your branding and they trust your personality. And that's what a webinar can do above all else. It'll express your personality and it will attract your prospects to you, your ideal prospects to you that want to work with you. Yeah. And so my number one rule of thumb is just get yourself out there, because they are buying you over anything else, and just deliver value. Start there and then start to optimize. Yeah,
the best webinars I've ever been on are the ones that feel super calm and collect and comfortable, and they just get out there, they do their thing. They're not hardcore selling or salesy. They're really connecting with the audience. So when the comments or questions start coming in, right, they're connecting and engaging. And I think that is what really, really connects a brand to their audience. And what I want to piggyback on, what you just said, was understanding your audience better than they understand themselves is really, really going to help you come across as a subject matter expert and not get so tripped up. Because I think one of the biggest fears is, well, what if someone asks me a question that I don't know? Mm-hmm. What do you do? Right? So before we go, that one just kind of came to me. How would you handle that?
I'd be honest with them and say, hey, listen, this isn't something that I can handle here on the webinar. Do me a favor, shoot me an email afterwards, and we'll continue this conversation. We'll continue this discussion. But, if it's either too technical or I really just don't know the answer, I don't have any problem saying I don't know the answer. Because a lot of times, like for me, miscommunication comes through on Q&A chat boxes all the time. Like, people are either on their phone, they mistype things, or English might not be their first language. And I learned that the hard way, by the way. Like, I used to get so mad when people didn't have like proper grammar, and then total mistake on my part. Like, I didn't assume that I had an audience that was outside of,
United States
countries. And then I realized, like, I had some very high quality leads. They were just, English just wasn't their first language. Yeah. So anyway, if I can't answer that question, I'll just say, listen, hit me up on email afterwards and we'll continue this discussion.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that I must say would probably be the best way to respond to a situation like that. I get it all the time when I do my AMAs on Instagram. Sometimes somebody will ask me something way out of my expertise, and I say, either I refer them out to someone, who I know is is a master at that, or like you said, I just handle the conversation offline, and that way we can dig a little deeper and ask the right questions, and to get sort of the solution that they're looking for. So this is awesome stuff, man. So before I forget, I want everybody to really understand more about what you do, and if they want to get in touch with you, if they need more help with their webinar, where can we go?
So my main hub you can find at thewebinaragency.com, and I've got a handful of resources for you guys to check out before you can reach out to me, or whatever you want. But there's lots of free stuff that you can grab. So number one, you can subscribe to my Sold with Webinars podcast. So go to thewebinaragency.com, and there's going to be right on the homepage above the fold, you'll have links to go check that out. Or you can go to thewebinaragency.com/podcasts. That's plural, podcasts, and you'll see the link to that podcast. The other option, and there's also ways that you can work with me on that homepage. So just go check that out, and all the information is there. And the other podcast, which Henry has been a guest on, and he will be coming on. It will be going live here shortly in the next couple of months. Is Experts Unleashed. So you can go check out that other podcast called Experts Unleashed, and that's where you can connect with me and learn more about me, and we'll start building our relationship.
That's awesome, Joel. Joel, it's always a pleasure to have you, to rock and roll with you, and to interact with you. I love your authenticity. I love your transparency. I love how just honest you are with everyone that you work with and you communicate with. And that's something that comes far and few these days. And I just want to acknowledge you and tell you that from an outsider looking in, you're one hell of a dude. And keep up the great work. I love what you're putting out.
Likewise, man. You're the exact, we're two peas in a pod, so I can say the exact same thing about you, but I appreciate that very much, and it means a lot coming from you. So appreciate the compliments.
You're welcome, my man. You're welcome. So real quick, guys, let's wrap this up. I hope you guys had an amazing time on this podcast and video. Couple things. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet on iTunes, please head over there right now and do so. And if you really like the value that we're dropping, take a second and write a quick little written review. You have no idea how far that goes for podcasters, right, Joel?
Amen.
So if you could do that for us, that would be awesome. If you haven't subscribed to YouTube yet, be happy to have you as a subscriber there, as I continue to bring you as much value as I possibly can to help you build your brand, connect with your audience, and really create a great business for you to leave that legacy behind and really impact as the people that you want to help and inspire with your business. So hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will catch you on the next one. Take care, guys.